If you're a parent, this school year has taken a toll on you. But because you're a parent, you've had to hold it together for your kids. Keeping all that emotion inside isn't easy, and it's probably not healthy for you or your kids. Today, we have a special gift for you. Our guest is going to give you some quick, doable ways to use art to release that pent up emotion and take care of you. This is LD Expert Live. Did you know that doing something creative, even something like gardening or baking, can release dopamine in the brain and act as a natural antidepressant? Do you have one of these? This is a coloring book for adults. When it was first given to me as a gift, I privately thought, yeah, this is cool, but I don't have time for this. But it turns out that coloring can be very relaxing. The brain likes color and repetitive movement, and taking a few minutes for ourselves in the middle of a busy day actually clears the mind for better productivity. Today, we wanted to give you a little boost, a Valentine's Day gift. So grab a piece of paper and some colored pencils, crayons, or markers. Our guest, Nadia Paredes, is going to show you how to use art as an emotional release and a way to take care of you. And as a bonus, learn how art can open up communication for your kids. Welcome to LD Expert Live, your place for answers and solutions for learning differences, dyslexia, and attention challenges. I'm your host, Jill Stowell, founder of Stowell Learning Centers and author of At Wit's End, A Parent's Guide to Ending the Struggle, Tears, and Turmoil of Learning Disabilities. This book will help you better understand your smart but struggling students and what can be done to resolve the challenges. To get a free copy, go to parentsatwitsend.com. Let's say hello to Lauren, our moderator and the Stowell Learning Center Director of Clinical Growth and Operations. Good morning, Lauren. Happy Valentine's Day. Almost.
Good morning. Yes, happy Valentine's Day. Hello to everyone watching us live. We already have some check-ins. We have Mona from our friends at Futures Academy in Pasadena. Welcome. Thank you for checking in. Let us know that if you're watching us live, where you're checking in from by commenting in the comments. And we love to see where everyone is viewing from. So love to have you here this morning with us. Parents, if you are in need of a resource, we have one for you. Our private Facebook group, Mom Squad, is a Facebook group. You can find it on our Facebook page or by searching Facebook groups. Search SLC Mom Squad and you'll find it and request to join. We have a lot of resources in there for you. I repost different webinars and resources. If you want to ask questions, Facebook has this new feature. You can ask a question anonymously and get advice from the group. We're just really building a community of parents who get the struggle and want to support each other. So you're welcome to join. Look forward to seeing you in Mom Squad. And I am really excited about today's show. I love art. My daughter loves art. We're going to be doing an activity today, parents. So if your kids have any art supplies laying around, my daughter has some art supplies. So I'm going to be grabbing her stuff today to use that. Join us for this activity and post your thoughts and feelings and questions about today's activity. We have some more people hopping on. So let's see. We have Sigrid from 𝗣𝗿𝗲. Welcome. Thank you so much. And we have Cynthia. Hello. Glad to be here today. Welcome. So let's see. And she is from the American Art Therapy Association, and they will share this. Thank you. Welcome. Today, I'm really looking forward to today's show. It's supposed to be fun and really looking forward to what our guest shares for how to help parents, but also doing the activity. So keep posting your questions and comments, and I'll check back in a little bit.
Great. Thank you, Lauren. This is LD Expert Live. I'm your host, Jill Stowell, founder of Stowell Learning Centers. Our guest today is Nadia Paredes. Nadia is the founder of Art Food Dreamers, a bilingual resource for empowering, healing, and artistic inspiration. With expertise and training as an art therapist, intuition painting facilitator, and a licensed marital and family therapist, Nadia creates programs for emotional health, connectivity, and art making as a mindfulness practice. Welcome, Nadia.
Hi.
So
Hello,
great
everyone.
to have you.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
I can see you're in your studio. It looks so fun.
Yes. I usually do murals. That's what you see in the back.
Well, I know you're really passionate about using art as a wellness practice. What's the story behind that? What led you to combining art and psychology?
Well, let me tell you, when I was little, I loved drawing, right? Like my mom had to do something, she would just throw in like whatever paper she had, whatever pen or pencil, and just like, you take care of yourself, so I would draw for hours and loved it. But sadly, at some point, and I think many people can relate, a teacher told me I was not a good artist. Like I wasn't good enough. She was like, "Oh, you do fine, but not really talented." And at the same time, I had people telling me that I was very talented at music. So I thought, well, I'll dedicate myself to music because that's where my talent's at. So I diverted from art many years, but it was always there. Like the love for art was always there, trying to pull me back in. And one day when I was in college back in Mexico in the university, someone came from Loyola Marymount University here in Los Angeles, and they gave us a lecture. And I thought, this is so dumb. Like, why are we having a class about art and therapy? It makes no sense at all. I want to go back to my studies with my rats and my lab in psychology. And of course, that one lecture changed my life completely. I went out, like they gave us an experiential, about art making for healing. And then I was hooked. I was like, this is the most beautiful thing I have ever experienced. It makes complete sense. And from that moment on, I was like, I'm going to be an art therapist. So when I finished college, it was, I guess, my way to be closer to the art without feeling like I needed the talent for it. So I moved from Mexico City to Los Angeles to become an art therapist. And, and then from there, it snowballed into just learning more and more how art doesn't really need talent. It just needs you for permission, to express yourself.
What a great story. Parents have so much on their plate right now, especially with so many people trying to work at home and monitor their child's distance learning. And I think a lot of them would say, I'm just stretched too thin. I can't add one more thing. What would you say to them?
Well, I think that it is very important to know that we do need to take care of ourselves in order to function better, right? When we're stretched thin, it feels like we're overwhelmed. We can do things. And then we start to notice that we're not doing things right. And I like to use, the metaphor of the oxygen mask in an airplane, right? I don't know if you've ever flown an airplane, they always tell you put the mask on first before putting it on your child. And the reason is, it's because, if you don't put it on, you put it on your child, but you faint, then who's going to take care of the child, right? So you need to, if you put it on and the child faints, you can take care of the child. We don't want that, of course. But the point is that you need to be okay in order for you to help, create that, space for your children, that space of love and growth and what we all, want for our children. And art is a really great way to do this. Because you don't really need a lot of time. You can do very simple art exercises. They don't need to be 3 hours long. You can really literally do 5-minute sketches and that's it. Or even better, you can sometimes do them with your kids. So that's actually kind of cool. Like you're actually doing self-care, but at the same time doing it with your kids. So you kind of like can do two at the same time, which I think most parents want.
Yeah. We do. We're great multitaskers. And, I think you're right, though. Self-care is so hard. I think especially for moms, but it's so important. And, I know you touched on this a little bit, but I'd love for you to talk about it a little bit more. I'm sure many people would say, like me, would say, I'm not really very good at art. So,
well, let me tell you, that's actually what I love doing. Like, that's what I'm passionate about, helping people, be creative and become artists. Because as I was telling you before, you kind of need to give yourself permission to create without thinking about it as something beautiful. Like, you're not going to create, I'm not asking you to create like a painting that will go in a museum. What we're talking here, it's about it's what I call the difference between fine arts and art that is fine for me, right? So fine arts, yes, they go to museums, galleries, they're sold, like people do this as a profession. They do it for 8 hours a day. Of course, they're going to be, very good painters or artists. However, when we talk about the healing arts, it's just art that you're good with, that it helps you as a tool. Nobody has to see it. You're going to do it for yourself. It can go in an art journal, which is, something that we'll probably talk about a little later because that's what I do. It's something private that you can do for yourself. And if you want, you can throw it away in the end. Like, it really does. You don't need an attachment to how it looks, because it really is just about the process of creating, like looking at yourself when you're creating, noticing. Again, it's a mindfulness practice, just noticing what you're thinking. If you're being harsh, if you're being like, this is horrible, notice, oh, I'm talking to myself very negatively. Why? I'm just playing with art materials. So you can tell your brain, like, thank you, brain, but right now I'm playing. And you can continue creating, and always I like to, to explain to people that art is a great container for emotions. So that's why it really doesn't matter how pretty or ugly it is. What matters is that you get out what you need to get out. And this is why when we work in what I call process-based art making, we focus on the intention, right? It's like, I want to release anxiety or anger or frustration, or I want to connect to joy, happiness, peace. So that's my intention. And that's what I create. When I'm creating, I just think like, is this thing that I'm doing helping me achieve that goal? So it doesn't matter how it looks, as long as it's helping me, connect.
That's a really great shift in how we think about art, because I mean, really, my first thought when I think about me doing art is, what's the product going to look like? And you're really talking about just engaging in the process. And I loved that. It's art that is fine for me.
Yes. Awesome. Like I tell my clients, it's usually tell them, like, it's like exercising. Like, I don't think we're Olympians or professional athletes, but somehow we all exercise in a way. We go out for walks, we go out for runs, we go to the gym, and we're not judging ourselves for it. We're not like, oh, I'm not going to be Tom Brady, therefore I shouldn't be doing this. No, we just do it. And I think the art should be the same way, where you're just like, I'm going to do this for myself. Fine, let's go.
So let's do an activity so people can have an idea what it's like.
Of course. Yes, I feel like there's nothing like learning from experience, right? I can talk about this all day, but when you experience it, you will know. So what we're going to do today is a little exercise I like to call emotional color palette. And what you do is very simple. You will need colors, whatever colors you have at hand. It can be markers, crayons. I have markers, just so you guys can see, what I'm doing. But colored pencils work fine. Crayons, again, you choose. And you'll need a blank piece of paper, printer paper, or it can even be a recycled paper. Like sometimes I use, recycled paper for these things. So what you're going to do, it's very simple. You're going to fold your paper in half. And then you're going to fold it in half again. That way, when you open your page, you will see you have 4 squares, right? And we're going to express 4 emotions. So you can use 1 square per emotion. And now what you're going to do, it's very simple. I want you to look at your colors and choose a color that for you represents happiness today. What color is happiness today? Just look at your colors. Whatever color calls you first, go for it. Don't think about it too much. And once you have your color, what you're going to do is I want you to think, how does happiness move, right? If I were to take this color on a happy dance, how would it dance? on my paper, right? It might be a quick kind of like very, if you're happy, you want to be probably dancing and jumping around. So probably that's the movement that I'm looking for. So what we're going to do now, very simple. We're going to jump in. We're going to take our color for a happy dance on the first square. And from there, I'm just going to jump to each emotion, and I'm going to do this quickly, and I'll let you know why after we finish. Okay. So let's start with happiness. Let's go on a happy dance, first square. So let's do this. All right, second square. I want you to choose a color that represents anger for you. So what color is anger for you today? And how does anger move? We're going to take our color on an angry dance. So let's go. All right. Next feeling. I'm going to go for sadness. I want you to think of maybe sadness is like a slower, like move that is just like, a little bit down. So take your color that you chose for sadness today and see how it moves. And last but not least is peace. What color represents for you peacefulness today? And how does peace move for you? Peacefulness can be rhythmic. And again, everyone has their own movement, but I'm just giving ideas for those who don't know, all right? So just grab your color and take your color on a peaceful dance. All right, and here you go. I'm going to show what I did. I have happiness, anger, peacefulness, and sadness. And I do this exercise fairly quickly because I didn't want to give anybody time to think too much. We tend to overthink. And when we're wanting to connect to our creative side, we really want to just let our first impulse jump in and let us know what we need. So that's why I did it quickly. If you want to do this for a longer period of time, of course, you're more than welcome to. You can take your time maybe with one feeling. Maybe you're feeling overwhelmed. Maybe you're feeling angry. So you can take all the time you need with anger, or with sadness, or with maybe you want to reconnect to peacefulness, and something that I love about this exercise is that you can do this daily and it'll change because our emotions are in constant change all the time. So happiness will not feel the same on days that we're mostly sad. And then on days that we're happy, probably happiness will be very different. So the movement will change, but also the colors will change because again, our moods are changing all the time. And you can use this, if you want in an art journal, you can do this again for parents. You're like, I need a break. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Go in, take 2-minute break in the bathroom, color that emotion out, and then breathe in again, close it off, and move on with your day. You can even use this with your kids as well, or use it for the coloring book that Jill was talking about earlier. You can just, tag feelings and color with those feelings. And that way you're using it for relaxation and at the same time for emotional release.
Wow. I loved that. That was fascinating to me, how each emotion, I really felt it. And when we got to the peacefulness, I could feel my breathing just slowing down. So it really is truly having a physiological effect on the nervous system. That's really fascinating. I was thinking, as you were talking about maybe taking one emotion, you're feeling really overwhelmed. If someone were to do that, really overwhelmed and what color and how does it move, it feels like that would begin to release some of that. And then if you think, wow, how does peace feel? Almost, could we make a physiological shift in that way?
Yes, exactly. That's how it works. It's like emotions live in our body. So of course, if we move our body, and emotions are also energy, right? So if we move the body and channel that energy, we can either create an emotion or release an emotion. And for me, the best combination is the one that you just mentioned, kind of like getting rid of the emotion that is unpleasant, because I don't like talking in terms of like negative and positive. So, it's like, I don't know. I just feel like it doesn't feel right, because emotions are emotions. They exist. We can't get rid of them. But it's great that we know that if it's unpleasant, yes, I can definitely, let it live through my body experience. And that's why art is so great for families and for children and for adults, because it's that bridge, that bridge between the brain and the body and the spirit. It's like, it just connects everything. So yes, that's a great way to do it.
I loved how you said emotions exist. I mean, often we do tend to place a real negative on certain emotions and a real positive on other emotions. And I like that perspective. I mean, they exist, and we kind of have to honor what exists in us, and then learn how to control or adapt or whatever. You've mentioned a few times that we can do this with our kids. And so how might this look if we were, trying to help our kids become more aware of emotions? How could you see applying that activity with kids?
Well, you can actually do, the emotional color palette can be done pretty much with children of, all ages that already draw. If you have a baby, that's probably not too realistic, but yes, you can do this very simple thing. Like, you can tell your child, and let me tell you something, like, art is a natural language for children. It's just the way they express themselves first. They don't have the words, but they do have the visuals for it. So if you tell your child, draw me how you feel, they will know. Like, this exercise, what I explained, is explained for adults. If you tell a child, just draw anger, they're going to know perfectly what to do. They're going to be like, oh yeah, this is anger. And then they're going to just jump in and do it because they're naturally drawn to it. We somehow sadly forget as adults. But you can do this. I can see it, for example, with children when they're arguing. If you have, like, in your family, kids are arguing, you're like, hey, you know what? Stop for a second. Draw how you're feeling. Then you can have, again, you contain the emotions. You kind of like help them get to a level where they actually connect to the emotion. And instead of yelling at each other, they're yelling at the page, which is probably what you prefer, right? And once they do that, the anger is contained in a piece of paper that then you can use to be like, wow, we managed the anger. Now we can talk about it, because when we're angry, we're not really thinking, we're just reacting. However, if the anger is out and it is kind of like finally locked up in a space, then it can open a conversation. Now we can really think, because the energy of the feeling is out. So, and then you can also use this, if you, are with your children and you have them like draw their anger out, instead of, judging them, or instead of telling them like, no, that's not right, or you shouldn't be doing this, or you shouldn't be doing that, just be curious. Use the language of art as a bridge to communicate with your children, and be curious. Just ask them like, wow, your anger was so strong that it tore the paper, right? So then the kid feels like his feelings are being acknowledged. Again, in a safe space. I'd rather have them tear a page apart than tear someone else apart, right? Mm-hmm. And also, you could just point out the colors, like, wow, what colors did you choose today? Oh, why did you choose those colors, right? So you can just ask questions about what's being created and have them explain to you, instead of you trying to figure out what your child drew, because, the artist is the only one that knows, like, really what they created. We tend to give it symbols, but that's just us, because art is a mirror. It's a mirror for everyone. And it's talking more about you than it's talking about the creator. So that's why art therapists are so important, because we learn how to navigate this, but you can do it very simply at home, just being curious.
And what a great way to help children to start to recognize their emotions and the how extreme their emotions are. Sometimes we work with children who you might say are dysregulated emotionally. They have, big swings and very intense emotions, and they have not really developed the awareness of that in order to begin to control it and match it to the situation. And I think something like this really helps them to start to recognize what it's called, what it feels like, how intense it is, and also then the shift in the feeling once it's out. Oh, I'm still a little bit angry, but not so much, and I can talk about it now. So, I think it just sounds like an amazing tool, and also a real eye opener for parents about how their child is feeling. Just really an amazing way to build awareness around emotions.
Absolutely. Like, the beauty about art is that it can be kind of like a third person in the room. It can help you kind of have something else. It can be, and at the same time, it can be the teacher, it can be the container, it can be the therapist. It's like, I love actually talking about this book that I love. It's called The Innovative Parent. It was written by Erica Curtis, which was my professor back in art therapy school. And Erica Curtis, she's also an LMFT, also art therapist, board certified, and she co-wrote it with Ping Ho. And what they do is they talk about how you can use art actually as a parenting tool. And I love it. I refer to it all the time. I highly recommend it. If you're more interested, in learning how art can be kind of like that third person in the room that can help you, navigate, difficult emotional situations. Even like one of the examples they use, and I love, is like the kid got very angry because the mom wasn't listening. She just listened to a fight from the other room. The kids were fighting in the other room. She was like, "Don't tell your sister this, blah, blah, blah." And then she just heard the child running and smashing the door. And she was like, "Oh my God, I don't know what happened." So she tries to talk to the child. She goes like, "Hey," knocks on the door. "Can we talk?" He's like, "No, get away." Right? I think we've all experienced this as parents. And get away. So what she did, she drew on a piece of paper a sad face. She was like, "I'm feeling sad," right? So she drew a sad face on one side and put it under the door. Funny thing is, the child wasn't talking, right? But he still drew back an angry face and kind of like put it back. So then they exchanged that paper for a couple of minutes until he opened the door and he was like ready to talk. So, that can be another way you can use it. And such tips come all in this amazing book. I highly recommend it.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And we put that up in the chat so that people can have that reference. It sounds like a great resource.
Yes, I highly recommend.
Students with reading or other learning challenges operate under a lot of pressure and frustration all the time. And they're constantly under expectations that they either can't meet or they're afraid that they can't meet. And I can really see this technique being a good outlet and a good way for parents and teachers to get a glimpse at what their kids are experiencing, because they certainly can't always explain it, why they feel so frustrated.
Yeah, it's like, as I was telling you, art is the original language of children. So when you use art, you're actually talking down, like you're talking back at their level. So then you're playing in their field, right? They're not feeling like they're visitors. Now they're actually playing at home. So they can tell you more what's happening. You can see it. And you can even, you use it as a parent to maybe talk to a teacher and be like, this is what's happening for him. Then you can all understand what's happening because the visuals are so strong. I mean, we say it, an image says more than 1,000 words. And that's why I love using art, because you can revisit it later. You can just see advancement. You can build resilience. Like, I can talk about this all
day. Amazing tool. I just have so many ideas coming into my mind right now.
I love that.
If you're just joining us, I'm Jill Stowell, founder of Stowell Learning Centers, and my guest today is art therapist Nadia Paredes. Let's check in with Lauren and our viewers and see how everyone liked your emotional color palette activity.
I love this, and Nadia, I love your passion. This is so great. I'm joyful just listening to you and participating. It's amazing. We have, it looks like, an international community joining us, and so Sigrid was checking in earlier. She sends a virtual hug, and I will say, it said, do you know her? Is this somebody that you know from? Awesome. Is it Berlin? Because I teach reading to children who have dyslexia, so we are very specific about every letter. And so it might have been a typo, and I said Belrin, but very cool. That is so cool. We have an international community. We also have Mango checking in. Nadia, I love the expression of art. Fine for me. I hope to manage this exercise in my day-to-day, experience the emotion, a way to rewire the brain and the heart. Greets from Berlin. Again, Germany checking in. I love it. Artist in Germany. Yeah, amazing. We have Linda. So looking forward to the activity. Linda Crane from Canyon Lake, Texas checking in. Awesome. Yeah, welcome. I mean, this is, I mean, and that's kind of, the point is that art kind of unifies us, and it's a universal language as well, as you were talking about, that, it's a way for children who don't have sophisticated language skills to express what they're feeling. We definitely see that in our centers. Quick question about the emotional color palette.
Yes.
Here's mine. We all want to share. About the activity, could this work with teenagers? I mean, is there...
This is the best way to work with teenagers. I mean, I used to work at a high school, at the German school. That's why we have the German community.
Oh, very cool. Yeah.
And I used to work, at the German school in Mexico City, and I worked with teenagers. I was in charge of middle school and high school. And of course, art was the best way for them to communicate. Art is such a good tool for self-exploration and self-expression, which is what teenagers need at that stage. They're trying to find themselves and who they are. And so the arts are a great way for you to just find who you are and try out, the different identities that you want. And you can do them safely on a piece of paper. So, you can create collage, you can, paint about it, you can draw yourself. And then just try and explore. And the emotional, color palette can be done even when you're like, hey, I feel like you're feeling very frustrated today. Do you want to draw about it? And you can just use it as a parent to be like, maybe you want, this space for you. Or even doing a check-in at night, right? For the whole family. Just be like, hey, how about we all draw how our day was? And also something I haven't mentioned is that what I love about art is that it can also hold contradicting emotions. You can have a bad day and a good day at the same time, right? You can be like, I had a horrible day at school, but then I got home and then I saw you, Mom, and you baked cookies for me. And that was amazing. And that made me feel good again. And so, your day can start horrible and then somehow improve. And if you do a review at the end of the day, at night, before we're going to bed or something, you can just be like, you can draw them and then you can have two emotions on the same page, living together, because that's actually how emotions live. They live together. They're not isolated.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
I can see how you call this a mindfulness practice, because truly you're becoming just so much more aware, instead of just, I didn't have a great day today. I mean, we're really becoming aware. Wow. Some parts were really not good and some parts actually were, I really love this. I'm really resonating with everything you're saying.
Good. And I have a couple of, just connections with our work at the center. One, I ask about teens because that's usually the population that we see when they're, that are more likely to be shut down. So, when we're working on site, but we could also do it remotely as we're working in our remote sessions. Occasionally we get kids that they start their session and they're not in the best frame of mind. Whatever life, has happened before our session is getting in the way. And we we always try to acknowledge that, because we're dealing with a whole child. We're not trying to like, oh, that's not important. Let's get to your, let's get to our session. It is. And dealing with that. And I just, for years we have allowed kids, if they come to us, if they're physically on site in the center and they're just, they have something that they have to work through that'll get in the way of the session being productive. For years, we've put headphones, some sound therapy, music therapy on the student, and we have them just draw for 5 minutes. And a lot of times that is the kind of shift that needs to happen, and the rest of their session is really productive. I mean, I can tell you years and years of countless students where it's like they just needed to make that shift and they just needed to get it out there. And, and sometimes they want to talk about it afterwards and sometimes they don't, but they can shift. And so I like this activity because it gives them permission to shift, as Jill was saying, and ending with that peacefulness. Just the importance of making a mental shift, especially when, our sessions are pretty intense. We're doing brain training, and even though it's fun and engaging, it's a lot of energy that's going into that session. And so asking for our kids to be present for that, this is a way to help them transition. So I could see the correlation there. I think that's amazing. And then the other connection I have, again, story relating to the Learning Center, is again, for years, in combination with sound therapy. So this is interesting because we have the auditory stimulation and then we have the visual with the art. For years with sound therapy, as we're a lot of times meeting with parents, we would introduce the sound therapy, the music, with students on headphones, and we would just have them draw, and we would leave the child, the teen, alone and meet with the parent, and then come back to the drawing and we would save it. And it's interesting as a student progresses with us, saving that artwork, saving those drawings that they were just doing for 5 to 10 minutes, and you can see the progression of growth with a lot of our kids that, like, at first maybe something so simple or disconnected, like they're drawing people, but their heads are disconnected from their bodies, things like that. And by the time they're done with their program, they have this, there's just so much more connected and so much more color. So, using art as a way to even measure growth is the connection I'm making too, of like, because it's mindfulness. It's what am I feeling today? What am I what can I express? So I just thought that was really cool.
Absolutely. I totally resonate because that's exactly why art therapy, I think, is so great. When you're an art therapist, you can show your client their progress, right? Sometimes they have a hard time noticing what you see as a therapist, where you're like, but you've grown so much. And they're like, oh, it's not enough. And you're like, I have art to show you.
Yeah, right.
So you have these like visuals that stay there forever. And then you can even check in with your own art later and you're like, oh, wow, I didn't notice this before. I mean, you can even go back to old art and find new things about yourself that you didn't know, because the art will project way more than you are wanting to project. And sometimes you're not ready to see it, but when you are, then you see it and you're like, oh my God. So it's a great way to build resilience because you have concrete proof, which also goes back, to working with children and adolescents. They require a little bit more of the concrete space than us, which we can do abstractly ideas more easily.
Right. Absolutely. And I think, for our kids that traditionally have difficulty with writing, sometimes, writing is a form of expression too, but that might be too high level, and art is a nice, kind of segue. I can still express, it can still live and be a permanent record of my growth, but it's not as intimidating as writing at first. So I love it. If anyone who's watching, if you have any, aha moments like I'm having, be sure to post them in the chat and we'll check back in one more time before the end of the show. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thank you, Lauren. This is 𝗣𝗿𝗄𝗏 Live. Our guest today is Nadia Paredes. We are talking about how to use art as an emotional release and a communication bridge with children. So you have mentioned art journaling a couple of times, and I would love for you to talk about that a little bit more because it sounds like an amazing tool.
It's like, well, what am I going to say? It's like, I love it. journaling, it's like regular journaling, you write in a journal, but here instead of words, we use imagery. We use arts. So we can take it to the next level. I mean, you can use writing as well, but you can always take it to the next level by adding imagery to it. It kind of like it's an activity, as I said, it really is great for mindfulness. It can help you, just again, have a quick check-in with yourself all the time, all day. It doesn't require, as I mentioned, it doesn't require you to draw for like 40 minutes or an hour, 5 minutes, do a quick kind of like let out that feeling and then move on, right? And then you can maybe check in with it later or recreate it. So, it's like, your feelings then are being recorded. As we were just talking, except we're talking about, you can do this for yourself. I mean, you can do it with kids, but you can do it with yourself. You can just check in. When I started my art journaling practice, how was I? And then, so you progress. And even as I'm teaching it right now for my college students in Mexico, where I teach a class, I'm teaching them about art journaling. And I brought out some of my old art journals, and it was amazing. I didn't even remember I created all these things and the ideas that I had before. And it was nice to see there was a connection of like, wow, I did have those dreams back then. I just didn't remember I had them. So it's always great to have this visual record of yourself, so it can keep you kind of like on track if you're wanting, to get somewhere, if you want goals to achieve. You can create visuals for yourself as reminders to pump you up, to be like, I want to get here, and you put yourself a goal. You can create how that goal will look. And then you can look at it constantly and see like, yes, this is what I'm working towards to. On days where you're like, I want to give up, you can have this visual of like, oh no, that was the dream. I need to keep going forward. And also what I love about our journaling is that it helps you, just kind of like see things differently. It can help you shift your mindset because you go into a creative mind. The creative mind is very important because creativity is what helps us solve problems. Usually we think of creativity and people think of the arts, and that's not true. Creativity is about solving problems. So if you exercise your creative muscle, you're going to get so much better at solving problems in your everyday life. Creativity is about thinking outside the box, right? So if you help yourself think outside the box on a piece of paper, then you may have ideas. Like something that I love doing for my business, I create collage about it. When I'm like, I'm stuck, I don't know how to solve this. I'm like, okay, let me create art about my business problem, right? And then I create art about it. And then I look at it from a distance and suddenly the ideas come up. I'm like, it gives me the words I was lacking to realize in action what I needed to do. So, again, it's a great way if you want to use it also for, for your work, it can actually work too.
Sometimes we get so intense in our problem solving and so involved in it. And really, we do need that creative part of the brain to help us out to see more possible solutions so that we can come to the right one. So that's a really interesting way to kind of access that. You said something else that really struck me. You were talking about with goals, like you in your journal, you may have goals that you're trying to reach, and so to use art around that. And I was thinking, whenever we work with goal setting and motivation and trying to help students to think forward to where they want to go, we try to get them to connect to the emotion of that, because we really aren't going to really get somewhere if we aren't emotionally invested. And it's really hard for them to talk about what they would feel when they reach that goal. But this would be a great way to put it in what feels like a much less threatening way, to just say, wow, think about meeting that goal. What color would that be? Or, how would it move? I just, applying what you said from color palette just to that idea to help them begin to connect to an emotion that is going to motivate them to move forward towards something they want. All of us, actually. Yeah. Very cool. And also I was thinking about, really, there certainly are children that we work with that that struggle even with expressive language. And so just having a way to express how they're feeling without having to use words. And I would love for you to talk about that a little bit more with kids.
Of course. It's like, again, it's like art is just a language. At some point, we valued it differently. At some point, we said like art is just for like the art world, galleries, museums. But the truth is art is a natural language we are born with. We talk about feelings, yes, but feelings are an experience, right? And art is an experience. So it doesn't require, words. And that's what it makes it so beautiful. If, as I was even saying before, it's like you can do this with even very little kids. You can set rules for them. You can just be like, hey, how are we going to brush your teeth? Oh, I want us to dance before I brush my teeth. Fantastic. Draw that. And then your child can draw herself like dancing while brushing her teeth. And then you can show her that at night, right? So it's very visual. And actually this exercise comes in the book that I was talking about, because the verbal, just gets lost. I mean, a child that age will probably forget if they told you, I want to dance before brushing my teeth. However, if you have the visual, it's kind of like as if she wrote a contract with you, because now you're like, look, you told me you wanted to dance before we brush our teeth. Oh yes, I wanted to brush my teeth, right? So the words, kind of like, that's how you start to show them how their words have meaning, but backwards. Like we start by the feeling, by connecting to the emotions. And then you can also give them labels for them. Like they can draw something, and if you notice things, you can maybe provide them with words like asking. Again, curiosity. Hey, I noticed that looks like maybe you're feeling frustrated. So you're improving their language words, right? Maybe at first we just call it anger, but then we can fine tune it into finer emotions. You can print out lists of emotions from the internet, and then, have like, we can draw them together, and you can show them like how the different emotions work. And again, because children experience the visuals and they're drawing it themselves, then they'll understand the concept, which is hard for us to explain verbally, right? Like, what's the difference between anger and frustration? And you're going to be like, oh, well, with one. But if you experience it, then you're going to be like, oh, I get it. So then you will even notice children starting to talk, more, I don't know how to say this, so kind of like more elegantly about their emotions. So it's a great way to do that as well, because emotions need acknowledgement. That's all they do. That's when you feel overwhelmed. You just need to label them, and then you're like, yes, oh, now it's gone.
That is just fabulous stuff. I find with kids that struggle with emotional regulation that often they can tell you all the right things about the emotion, but somehow they're not recognizing it when it's happening. And I can just see that experience would be so powerful for them, and then adding the language to it, getting the language connected with the experience, as opposed to connecting language with language, trying to deal with emotions.
This kind of like happened with us creating the emotional color palette. I could have explained this process to you, but then you lived it and you're like, oh, yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also you've mentioned a number of times that this is something you could do with your kids. And I think, that is a great way to show your kids how to take care of themselves a little bit too. We learn by example. So
completely, like, children learn by example. You can tell them, like, do the art journal. Like, I heard this awesome show. You have to do art journals now. It won't be the same. If your child sees you engaging in the art journaling process or an art process or any creative process for self-care, you're actually actively showing them you need to take care of yourself too, right? So that's why it's like, it's a great way if you do it together. You can showing them, like, I'm going to do this with you. And then it's like, oh, okay, then this is important. This matters. It's not just like another task I need to do. It's something that we do as a family.
We wanted to do this show. When we first talked to you, we were like, oh, this would be such a fun Valentine's gift to give our viewers. And it is. I was also thinking about, this time in history that continues to be challenging, and how important it is to have art or some kind of creative outlet with all of the stress and uncertainty that's going around right now.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, I think one of my favorite things coming out of this pandemic is this quote that science will get us out of this, but the arts will get us through this. And I completely agree. I think this is a great time for us, like our art therapists, for professionals, music therapists, dance therapists, drama therapists, like all of the ones that were in the creative arts. We finally have see people connecting to their creativity. We start to suddenly see, oh, now I'm baking. You start to see your friends and they're like, I'm doing macrame. You're like, what? You? And I can tell you, art is anything. Of course, I talk about visual arts because that's what I do and what I love. But I think that anything that is creative can help you get out of your own head and out of your own way. And because when you're in that creative process, you can just start to think again, open your thoughts to a different way. You start to, again, see more options, because when we're in our brains, we're just going straight forward, whereas creativity takes us through different loops and whoops. And, even if you're baking, for example, you might be like, oh, this didn't turn out the way I wanted it. What happened? And you're like, oh, maybe it was too liquidy. Oh, how about next time we add more flour? Okay. Oh, it worked out, right? So it's a great way to, again, practice your own creativity. And I use that example because my husband is a bread baker and that's how he does it. He's actually in the science field. He's a chemical engineer, but he uses that background and then uses it in creative ways in baking, right? So you can do, really, you don't need to be, again, artsy to be doing this, you don't, and also, you don't have to leave your house for creative activities. Because, we've been enclosed for so long. Sometimes we might feel like, oh, I'm in this space, but imagination, it can take you anywhere. Ask children, right? Your children can play and pretend like they're in space, and they are in space. They're not in your home. And we can do the same. If you do visual guided meditations, you can just download one on YouTube. And you can just visualize yourself in the ocean. You can hear the waves and blah, blah. And then you're suddenly transported out of your own home. So something, you may want to try. I know I have a couple of music therapy friends who do all these sound baths. And they're a great way to just, again, disconnect and, and just go back into a space of peace. And then you can come back home. And then you never left. Also, you don't commute. So you don't need to worry about that. You'll have more time for your kids at home.
Right. So art and creative outlets are really preventative mental health then.
Absolutely. It's it's something that I love talking about, which is art. In the art therapy field, it is known as art for wellness. But I do believe that the work that I do, I call it preventive art therapy, because I think we can use these tools that we have, if I teach you, for example, how to use art for yourself, you can prevent getting worse. You can, manage your emotions now, deal with them instead of needing them to escalate to a point where you get sick. That's what we want to avoid, right? I worked in the mental health field for over 10 years. And now know how bad it can get if we bottle everything up. So that's why I became super passionate about teaching people hey, do things before so that you don't need to get sick. There are many ways that you can manage yourself, your emotions, improve your self-esteem, reconnect with yourself, and just be more, joyful and, or at least more adapted. Because I know you can't be happy all the time. Again, emotions, they come and go. But at least try to stay, on the higher wave for sure.
And what a great way to do it. Well, this has been a real gift, Nadia. Thank you so much. We've been talking today with art therapist Nadia Paredes about using art as a wellness and mindfulness tool. I want to check back with Lauren and our viewers in the chat one more time before we wrap up.
Yes, hello. We have, again, kind of with this vein of international viewership. So Nadia, I'm going to let you read this. It is in Spanish. I can translate. My accent is not that great, but it sounds like somebody who, finished class early. And so
she's one of my students from the university in Mexico. And she's saying, so I'll read in Spanish. Es, hola, Nay, terminé un poquito antes mi clase y me di una vuelta por aquí para saludar. Ya luego lo veo completo seguro. So she came in late and she was like, I'll watch it later, I promise.
try to get credit. That's like, awesome.
We'll talk to you.
Yeah, I love it. We have Mexico checking in. We have Germany. I really love this field, like this international community. I mean, that's really a part of what art does, is it connects us. And how many of us, like you said, are looking for that during this time in history of just connection. I wanted to touch just, again, I'm making so many connections to our work and to our students, but the idea you mentioned in the beginning and a little bit about when we're talking about kind of executive function, a lot of our students, we get, our students are bright, and, we do tend to have students that are kind of classified as twice exceptional, or 2E, where they have some kind of a diagnosis, ADHD or high functioning autism or dyslexia, but are also very gifted. And something that plagues that crowd a lot of times is perfectionism, and that, gets in their way, impedes actually their executive function skills. And so as you were talking about creativity with problem solving, that is something that when we work with them, that we work on. But I love the idea of, in art, when it's, judgment free, it's like, well, let's try. And, oh, that didn't work. How are we going to solve that problem? Instead of, oh, it didn't work, I'm going to fall apart, or I'm not going to try again, or I'm stuck kind of in this mindset of like, I'm not going to be able to do it, so I'm not even going to try. That idea of exploring that with your students or with your kids of like, I don't know what it's going to look like at the end. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but let's see. And it's okay. It's okay this time if it wasn't the way that you expected. I do know some people that have taken your classes have said that you've said, like, even, when we're so proud of something and we say beautiful, like, oh, it's beautiful. You're like, no, don't say beautiful. Like, because that is judgment. It's like, it's yours. Right. So that is something, a little birdie told me that somebody that was able to take classes. But I do see that. I mean, even when we're praising something, and we've kind of talked about this on our past show with Irene, when she talked about, our words with kids, that even when we're trying to praise our kids, our word choice is very important, because, our kids with perfectionism, oh, this is beautiful, and I did it perfectly this time. But if I have difficulty with perfectionism, I'm not going to want to do that again, because it may not be beautiful the next time. And so they kind of get in their own head space like that. So that is really the connection that I see, with art, of using that to work on some of those executive function skills and getting rid of perfectionism with our kids. So amazing. Thank you so much. And I love what you brought. Let's see, it looks like Mango checking in. Thank you. Looking forward to more tips to connect with the teenies. Definitely one of our challenging group. It's so amazing that we have this tool to really help them, especially for parents. Because I don't have teenagers yet. But when you're a parent of a teen, it's like, how, sometimes they just want to be in their room. Like, how do I connect with my kid? I know I have a lot of parents talking in Mom Squad about, like, how do I just get them to talk or share or want to spend time with me and not have their face in a device. And so the tips that you gave us today are really helpful for connecting with all kinds of kids and teens. So thank you. Parents, again, if you're wanting to, keep this conversation going, or you have follow-up questions, if you're watching the broadcast and it's not live, the recorded version that's posted on YouTube or Facebook, and you have questions, go ahead and post them in Mom Squad, our private Facebook group. You can find it by searching on our Facebook page, or by searching Facebook groups. Type in SLC Mom Squad and it should pop up, and you can request to join. That's a resource for you, for parents. Anyone who's wanting additional tips or insights into parenting a kid with learning or attention challenges. And next week, I'm happy to announce we will be having our second peace meeting of the year for February. So Thursday, February 18th at 5 p.m. Pacific time, I'll be hosting our peace meeting. It's a little bit of a different format than the show LD Expert Live. It's a Zoom meeting. So I get to see your faces. I'm really looking forward to that. Seeing your little box on the computer, having you come on and share, and we'll talk about, just the struggles that you're experiencing at home, give you some tips. I'm really going to be going over the learning skills continuum in depth and really talking about all those underlying skills that could be impacting your child's learning, attention, behavior, all the kinds of things that you're seeing with struggles with learning and functioning right now. So you can register for peace. You do need to register for peace at stowellcenter.com/peace to get the link to join the meeting. We will also be broadcasting it in Mom Squad, but in order to participate in the meeting live, you do need the Zoom link. So I'm looking forward to seeing everyone there. And thanks to everyone who participated. This was a great show, really interactive, really got kind of, us making a lot of really good connections. So thanks to everyone who participated live and commented, our international community. This was a great show. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you, Lauren, and everyone who joined us today. Nadia, I love these tools that parents can use for self-care and for helping their kids build emotional awareness and regulation. We know from our work at the Learning Center that awareness is the first step in changing anything. And art is such a gentle and powerful way to bring awareness for our kids or for ourselves around emotions and how they're affecting us and others and any shifts that we want to make. So that is amazing. I know that you do both art therapy and online workshops right now. What would you like us to know about that before we wrap here?
Of course. Well, as I mentioned, I work in the preventive field of art therapy, and I teach how to use the arts for emotional well-being. I either do it for, I design specific workshops when corporations, private groups, like they reach out to me and I design workshops for them. So, to provide, again, the education of how the arts can be a pretty much very useful emotional management practice. And also, it's like I also do monthly groups for the general public, or for parents, right, mostly, but, the general public can attend. And this month, I will be actually doing a conjoint, because again, love month, right? We're doing a workshop called Fall in Love with Yourself. And, we will be, using actually movement. I joined with a yoga instructor. So we're going to be doing combination of movement and art to, get rid of all the self-doubt, reconnect, with your inner wisdom, and just, again, help you fall in love with yourself again. Because sometimes we're just like so out of it. I feel like this is definitely, a workshop if you're a mom who's feeling like, again, disconnected or feeling overwhelmed, or just thinking like, oh, maybe I want to start this creative journey and I don't know how to do it. This could be a great way to start, and this time around, we will be welcoming, children who are over 8 to join. So, it's not only for you, if you really want, someone like, if you have your kids with you, you can do that, or kids who can just do art independently so that you don't miss the experience because you're helping someone else. Again, remember putting that oxygen mask on. However, it's like if our public is interested in working with an art therapist, for intervention, if you feel like you need probably more than just the preventive part of it, I highly invite everyone to check out the American Art Therapy Association's website, which is arttherapy.org. And there you can find, on our main page, you will see find an art therapist. You can click in there. It's a directory, so you can find an art therapist near you.
Perfect. Thank you, Nadia, so much for sharing with our audience today.
Oh,
Here is Nadia's information. Check out her website to find out about her workshops. These are a great way to take a little creative time out for you. This is LD Expert Live, your place for answers and solutions for learning disabilities, dyslexia, and attention challenges. We're live every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific. Next Tuesday, audiologist Dr. Cydney Fox will be here to talk about auditory processing disorder, what it is, how to test for it, and what can be done. She has a wealth of information on the topic, and she shares it in such a concrete, fun way. You will love her. Be sure to join us next Tuesday at 10. Stowell Learning Centers are open for remote sessions and screenings, so you can access our services wherever you are in the world. We're also seeing students on site at our 4 Southern California centers with all of the COVID precautions. We work with children and adults doing targeted brain training to permanently change learning and attention challenges and to help students reach their potential and thrive in school. If you would like a free consultation for yourself or your child, give us a call or visit our website at stowellcenter.com. Thank you again, Nadia, for this Valentine's Day reminder that self-care is not only a gift for you, but for your whole family as well. Enjoy some creativity this week, and we'll see you next Tuesday.